Hello, I'm Sunny, and this is my commentated Creatures Race in Space speedrun. Sorry in advance for my slurring voice. Unlike the other so-called ports of Creatures, there is no tutorial phase, so we hit the ground running as soon as the game loads. This area of the screen displays inputs if you're interested in seeing those. Our first goal is to guide Adam to the top right of the terrarium, where in Creatures 3 the door to the jungle terrarium would be. Instead, we'll find a key that only Norns can carry. Keys will let us progress through each level in the game, and the first level is the only one that needs 2 keys. While Adam is walking, I turn off Norn blabber sounds, which also controls the voice of your player avatar Scrubby. Her voice gets very annoying when you spam commands. Which Norn is active generally doesn't matter, although there's a glitch with pregnant Norns that means you might want to avoid Berta when she's expecting. Otherwise, just pick whoever is closest to you or has no pressing needs. Switching Norns causes time, especially if they are in separate rooms, since changing rooms has a loading screen. You'll notice I have some trouble with Norns actually grabbing the key. If this happens, you'll need to direct the Norn to back away so that you don't accidentally give a stay here command. Just try the approach again and hope for the best. While we're busy here, we'll get a message about Berta collecting hearts. Breeding in Race in Space has nothing to do with hormones. All you need to do to get a Norn ready to mate is to give them 10 or more hearts, which are scattered around the Norn terrarium. You can store extra hearts on a Norn for future breeding, and later we'll see a duplication glitch that makes collection even easier. For now, we need to unlock the door to the collecting machine. In regular gameplay, to generate keys, you need to put energy stars into the machine, but these two can only be carried by Norns. You can train an older Norn to automatically find and carry these stars. Stars will decay over time, so you need many skilled workers to outpace the decay rate. 25 stars are needed to generate each key. For reasons I'll discuss later, star collection is not only unnecessary, but actively detrimental to a glitch speedrun, so make sure you don't accidentally teach a Norn how to put stars in the machine. This risk will go away once stars stop spawning in the Norn terrarium. Once the machine is successful, you want to give Adam and Berta many hearts. If you repeatedly drop and pick up a heart by mashing triangle above a Norn, you can duplicate the heart, and if you're really lucky you can keep this dupe going dozens of times. My record was around 120 in one go. That said, it can be tricky to get more than one dupe if the timing or position aren't optimal, but I haven't found a consistent method yet. Ideally you only need 50 hearts each, but there are several ways a kiss pop can be wasted, so you may end up needing more. I'll get into that later on. The reason we need to breed Norns is because of a glitch with the star machine, which is really just a reused incubator from the first PlayStation game. It seems there might be some leftover code that causes the machine to react to any eggs put inside it, resulting in keys appearing without stars. I suspect this is why Race in Space doesn't allow you to pick up whole eggs like you could in the first game. However, egg shells left over from a hatchling can still be grabbed by both you and the Norns. Unfortunately, breeding Norns even with the required hearts is unpredictable. Sometimes they'll kiss pop as soon as they walk close together, and sometimes you spend a few minutes struggling to get them to notice each other. And sometimes they won't stop kiss popping, delaying the pregnancy or even starting a new one. This is by far the biggest source of lost time, and I have yet to figure out a way to consistently breed Norns. Once the egg is laid and gaining health, direct one of your Norns to the collection machine to save a bit of time. If possible, at this stage try to get both Norns to follow you. When you're guiding Norns to this area, be careful not to do the come here command on the nearby door to the resting room, because if the Norn enters you'll lose a lot of time getting them back out. You also don't want to leave them unattended here for long, because they might enter on their own. Once the egg hatches, quickly go over to where it was and take the eggshell before it vanishes. Be aware that Norns can easily steal it from you. Carry the eggshell to the collection machine, return to your Norn who has probably already gotten distracted, and guide them to pick up the key. You might also want to throw the eggshell off the side where the creature's 3 incubator would be, just to make sure your Norn won't grab it by mistake. Once they get the key, guide the Norn to the door between the Norn terrarium and the bridge. If the mate is nearby, make sure they are also following your come here commands. The key will blink yellow and you'll get the level complete screen. I split after closing the text with the start button. Usually at this point the mate will have already returned to the treehouse and you will need to guide your Norns back to each other. However, as seen here, it's also possible to keep the mate close by while retrieving the key, so that you can have them kiss pop again quickly. So far I've only gotten it to work for this one level before they got separated, but I suspect with careful movements and some luck you can sustain this for even longer. Of course, you still have to get them to kiss, which is an exercise in frustration. From this point onwards, the speedrun repeats the same steps. Breed Norns, put eggshells in the machine for a key, guide a Norn to the key for the door, and get it right back to its mate. Now that we know the basic steps of the speedrun, we can dive into some of the details. First, let's talk about the Norns we use. As you breed more kids, it may be tempting to leave Adam and Berta where they are and use the child to carry a key, but young Norns have a very slow walking speed, and babies cannot open doors. If a baby happens to be right next to the star machine and you haven't yet unlocked the bridge, or if you're in the endgame and an older child is much closer to the machine than an adult, it might be worth switching over, but otherwise you'll want to always use an adult. If Berta's egg-laying action is interrupted, it can cause her pregnancy to end without spawning an egg. 2 interruption methods I know of are making her use a lift and collecting a heart. Ending her pregnancy this way means you'll have to collect hearts again to make up for the wasted breeding attempt, so don't move a pregnant Berta around unless you know the way is clear. Other than this, there is no downside to using Berta instead of Adam, and switching Norns may be necessary so the other one can eat and sleep. Speaking of that, if your Norns get hungry or tired during this run, you can use food in the Norn terrarium to heal them up. I suggest the carrots, tree fruit, feverfew, and baobab flowers since they're not out of the way. Yes, in this game baobabs are actually a good plant and not a weed. None of this is strictly necessary, but it's important to not let your adults starve or get sick. If one of them dies, the time loss is so massive you may as well start over. While you could technically use the children to continue the run, Norns can't open doors until they're 5 minutes old, and can't breed until 40 minutes, so depending on when you lose a parent you could end up waiting almost twice as long as the run itself takes. Luckily, when you have one Norn up in the treetops and the other micromanaged by you, they're relatively safe from danger. Just don't leave them unsupervised in the bridge, where vicious doozers and sickly ettins will be. So why does your idle Norn spend so much time in the treehouse? A Norn who hasn't been taught to collect stars will usually go towards a safe location, and in the Norn terrarium there'll be the treehouses and the room near the collecting machine. Unfortunately, if you leave them in the bridge or in other rooms, they'll likely just seek shelter there instead of returning to the Norn terrarium, so you can't abandon your key carrier in the hallway and expect them to come home. If a Norn is skilled, it will seek out stars and bring them back to the machine. While this is incredibly useful for a casual run, it's bad for a speedrun because some locations take them far away from their mates and the machine. Training a Norn is an ordeal in itself because they'll often get distracted and drop a dying star. And finally, there is a game freezing glitch that can occur when Ettins throw stars into the aquarium ocean. Chances are your trained Norns will still be in there once the desert terrarium is unlocked, so going there to mate is risky. As I said before, if a couple stays close together, they can start kiss popping even when not needed. I've seen them waste 3 breeding attempts in a row because they refuse to separate. Eggshells despawn rather quickly, and you can't spawn the next level's key in advance, so unless you hit some very narrow timing, any extra mating is a waste. This is why I gave them enough hearts for 1 extra attempt, so that I wouldn't have to search for more hearts. Luckily, Adam gets distracted patting an egg, which gives me a chance to lure Berta away. Warning, there's going to be an audio jump scare in about 5 seconds. This is the first time I've had a Norn get sick during a run. In the PlayStation and GBA games, Norns get sick when they aren't sleeping in one of the designated resting areas, and they can then spread illness to more Norns. Norns can usually find shelter on their own, but I think this kid got confused by me spamming commands. If you're sensitive to Norns suffering, spoiler alert, a Norn very nearly dies because I ignored their illness. An optimal speedrun ignores the health of everyone but Adam and Berta. Still, during downtime, I'll make a couple attempts to treat the Norns. This whole section is a mess. Not only did the Norns crowding around me interfere with my commands, but Berta ends up going inside the resting room. This is a major time loss because it means having to load up this room, direct Berta away from the door and back, and load in the terrarium again. Had this not happened, I could have easily gotten all gold splits during this run. And had this and the breeding difficulties not happened, I could have gotten under 22 minutes. But there's no use crying over what could have been, especially not for this game. Nothing to do but keep going. There are a couple other glitches to keep in mind. When a Norn is entering a door, you shouldn't interrupt them by giving them hearts or praise or punishment, because that will cause them to freeze in place for several minutes. You can also interrupt the door unlocking animation in a similar way, which I accidentally do at the very end of the run. And while you can't get the next level's key in advance, the game seems to keep track of the number of times you've activated the machine, and will give you the final key warning early if you use it enough times. Weirdly, you actually can spawn the final key multiple times, but there's no point in doing so. And here you see the Ettins now, running off to crash the game mere seconds after being let out of the desert. Ettins truly live a tragic life in this game, running at full speed until they die of exhaustion. Even the game manual advises players to beat Ettins to make them drop the stars. Why are Ettins so consistently mistreated by the lore and mechanics of this series? This is an outrage. But here's the biggest question of all. Why? Why speedrun a game that's a pale imitation of the mainline Creatures games? Why not speedrun any of the other games? Can you even speedrun them? My philosophy is that any game with a goal can be speedrun, and if there isn't a goal coded in, you can make one up. You can see this in sim speedruns where the goal might be to die, get married, make money, or get promoted. For Creatures 2, your goal might be getting all the power-up tools, though this is mostly a test of how fast you are at pushing, pulling, and picking up Norns. In Creatures Village, the speedrun goal might be to collect all costumes or all puzzle pieces. In the GBA and first PlayStation creatures, your goal might be unlocking all worlds or playing the arcade games. And for OG creatures, well, you'd have to workshop your own goal. Maybe take a trip around Albia? I picked Race in Space because while a casual run with no early keys can take several hours, my own playthrough took 6 hours, save scumming included. Using glitches you can take it down to under half an hour. It's just the right amount of time for this run to last. Not so short that you can't keep track of what's happening, and not so long that you get bored of watching this pale imitation of the Creatures series. And honestly, I've got a soft spot for the PlayStation games. My introduction to the Creatures series was with the first PlayStation game. I never got far in it because as a child I had a nervous breakdown over the manual's insistence that its version of Norns were the real living animals that I was now responsible for. Yeah, funny how that worked out. Despite that, the concept of artificial life was fascinating, and I reread the manual many times. Later, when I got internet access and learned about the computer games, I was still too anxious to play any of them, but everything I learned about the digital genomes, biochemistry, and neuroscience was impressive. When I grew up, I finally got over my fears and played Docking Station, long after the end of online services, unfortunately. But we're all still here, aren't we? Creatures has a legacy that has outlasted the end of the series, carried on by players who still make content for it even now. At the time of this recording, this year's Creatures Community Spirit Festival is still ongoing. People are making videos about Norns other players have designed, recording their lives and deaths. People are creating new mods, from simple food items to totally new breeds and rooms. I'm doing a speedrun of a game that only has surface level resemblance to the complexity the main games are capable of. The legacy of the Creatures franchise is how it continues to inspire players to push the game to its limits. People have given Norns and their friends the ability to regulate body temperature, produce antibodies and other immune responses, and even bleed when injured. Some Norns can even swim or fly with just a few mods. We might not ever get to see the potential promised to us by Creatures Online, where Norns could learn to help each other just for the sake of altruism. But even so, fans haven't stopped trying to make their Norns worlds a little more lively. Here, I try to cure the dying Norn. Even though she's in the same room, selecting her still wastes some time on a screen transition since she's far away. I also get stuck in a naming screen. You want to avoid selecting the kids so that you don't get the naming screen, but if you somehow lost track of the egg, you can use this to hopefully find it. At any rate, I gave Common the wrong herb, but it still gives her just enough life force that she'll survive to the end of the run. Adam gets sick while we're away, and Berta is sorely in need of sleep, but I can just rush to the end now. Fun fact, Grandos can actually carry keys too. Their movement seems glitched, and getting them to obey come here commands is an uphill fight, but you could technically kill all your Norns, have Grando grab a key, and unlock the final door and still get the "You Saved the Norns" message. I'll make an example video of that soon of the so-called win. And with one final time loss because I forgot about animation cancelling, this run is done. While I could surely cut another minute off this time, I think I'm going to leave this as my first and possibly final submission. There's no speedrunning community around this game, nor do I think there will ever be one. This was just a proof of concept, to prove to myself that this game could be speedrun. And it was a way to give a bit of spotlight to a forgotten part of Creature's history. I hope you enjoyed this video, and enjoy the rest of the year.